Beautiful. I would like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. We are meeting in a hybrid format. Board members Bondo and Opperman are both not feeling great, and so are joining us remotely. Board member Figdor and Billiou are on their way in. Board member Figdor is here and actually coming to sit. And the student representatives will be joining us after our executive session. So we're going to go ahead and open the meeting, and then we'll move into executive session. So Dr. Warren, will you please call the roll?
Member Ali?
Here.
Member Billiou? Vice Chair Bondo?
Present.
Member Bryden?
Here.
Member Figdor?
Here.
Member Grant?
Here.
Member Noor?
Here.
Member Opperman?
Here. Here.
Student Representative Hayden? Student Representative Kantiba? Student Representative Knight? Student Representative McDonald? Student Representative Rosado? Student Representative Kunku? Chair Lentz?
Present. All right, thank you. And now the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Portland Public Schools recognizes the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand. The Wolastoqiyik, or Maliseet, Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes, known collectively as the Wabanaki Confederacy, or People of the Dawnland. We are honored to have Wabanaki children among our students today, and as a district, we are committed to making the past, present, and future of Wabanaki peoples visible in our schools and classrooms. And as a reminder of our mission, the Portland Public Schools is responsible for ensuring a challenging, relevant, and joyful education that empowers every learner to make a difference in the world. We build relationships among families, educators, and the community to promote the healthy development and academic achievement of every learner. And our definition of equity. Equity is all people being held to high expectations and having access to opportunities that are reflective of their individual needs, identities, and experiences. Equity is achieved in Portland Public Schools when there are no identifiable differences in outcomes and experiences for any population subgroup. Now I'm going to move us into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 405-6D to discuss the Portland adult education negotiations. Would there be a second on my motion? Thank you, Board Member Bryden. All those in favor of moving into executive session, please show of hands. All right, the vote is unanimous. Board Member Grant will be staying out here, but everyone else will be moving into executive session. And then we'll come back out and have the regular business meeting. So now we're going to move into our annual caucus of the incoming 2024-2025 Board of Public Education. And I'm just realizing, am I on Zoom still? Okay, let me see if I have Mondo. I do. Beautiful. If you're here for a public comment or the business meeting, that's going to take place directly after this. And so right now, if the members of the board, the new members of the board and student representatives of the incoming board can come up and sit in the chairs of the members you are replacing, we'll get started. And Portland High School students, you're okay to stay there for now. We'll just leave our student reps where they are. Yes, you're staying. Okay, we have now Board Member Lena and Board Member Ali coming up. Great. The purpose of this caucus is to discuss the leadership of the incoming board, specifically the chair and vice chair positions, and to come to the agreement on the nominations that will be brought forward for the official vote on December 3rd, which is the first official meeting of the incoming board. All votes taken tonight are considered straw votes, which means that they are non-binding. Official nominations and votes will be taken at the December 3rd meeting. This is an unusual process tonight, so I'll do my best to walk us through it all, but please raise your hand if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer them as we go along. So, Dr. Warren, will you please call the roll again?
I'll do my best. Member Ali?
Here.
Which one? Vice.
So there's two alleys.
Oh, let's see. We will get to, you should be here too somewhere.
Okay.
Member Yusra Ali,
Here.
Vice Chair Bondo,
Présente.
Member Bryden,
Here.
Member Grant,
Here.
Member Noor,
Here.
Member Opperman,
Here.
incoming Member Lena,
Here.
incoming Member Ali,
Here.
Chair Lentz,
Present.
Rosie Ziegler from Casco Bay High School, Julie Dove-Kentiba,
Here. Here.
Returning.
Marilyn O'Brien, and Zachary Lee.
Yeah, it sounds like we had a little bit of a miscommunication in getting new student reps here, but they'll be here for the inauguration for sure. So current student reps can just stay. Thank you. Just really quickly, welcome to our incoming board members. If you wanted to just say hello and what district you're representing, I'd love to just get your voice in the room. So,
You're at large. Go ahead.
okay.
I'm Maya Lena, and I will be representing the at-large district.
My name is Ali, Abdul Qadir Ali, but it's just call me Ali. District 2.
Perfect. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Now we're going to have a consideration and action to enter into caucus. So is there a motion to enter into caucus? Thank you, Board Member Grant. Is there a second? Board Member Noor, thank you. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, it's a unanimous vote to move into caucus. And we're going to start tonight with the nominations for chair and then move into the vice chair position. I'm going to open the floor for nominations for the 2024-2025 chairperson. Is there a nomination? Board Member Bryden?
Thank you, Chair. I am nominating Sarah Lentz as Chair of the Board of Education.
Thank you, Sir Biden. And at this, for these motions, we don't actually need a second. Are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing no other nominations, I'm going to close nominations and I accept the nomination. Actually, I forgot we have to take a vote to close the nominations. So consideration action to cease nominations for chair of the board. Is there a motion to cease nominations? Thank you, Board Member Noor. Is there a second? Thank you, Board Member Ali. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, unanimous vote to cease nominations of the board. Ms. Bryden, would you like to speak to your nomination?
I would. Thank you, Chair. I am continually impressed with the leadership skills and abilities of Chair Lentz, and I think that her continued leadership is what the Board of Education needs to do the best work that we can for the students of Portland as we continue to rebuild systems and trust throughout the district. So I am very excited to make this nomination.
Thank you, Board Member Bryden. Would anyone else like to speak to the nomination? Yeah, Board Member Ali, go ahead.
I don't know if I second that as well. And I just wanted to say that I am just as impressed. And Sarah is at almost every committee meeting, as well as being the chair, which is not an easy job. I appreciate your focus on teamwork and driving conversations, productive conversations, and just being a very welcoming face to anyone who's coming to the board, people who are confused. And I don't know, I wouldn't think of anyone else.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, seeing no one else, I would just like to speak to the nomination. As many of you know, it's not customary to have someone chair this board for more than 2 years at a time. However, given the recent transition in leadership and the launch of the new strategic plan, among other initiatives, the board has decided, or at this point has nominated me for this consistent leadership and feel it's both necessary and desirable. This job is incredibly challenging and requires many sacrifices, but it is also one of the most meaningful and rewarding jobs I've ever held. I also accept this nomination with full confidence in the continued leadership of Superintendent Scallon and of this board. Over the course of the last 2 years, I've spoken with the board about the hierarchical nature of the system that we are a part of, and that each one of us has to engage fully to move from a triangle with one or two leading at the top to a circle of people leading together. I invite each board member, returning and new, to step into their leadership this year to continue to push our board and this district to be the best that it can be. I thank you for this nomination. Just one more time, anyone else need to speak to the nomination? Okay, and with that, we're going to move to a vote. As a reminder, this is a non-binding vote to appoint me, and this is where it's awkward, appoint me, Sarah Lentz, to the position of board chair for 2024-2025. Per policy BDB-R, please name the individual that you're voting for with your voice when you're called on, as opposed to saying yes. So Dr. Warren, can you please call the roll?
Member Yusra Ali,
Sarah Lentz.
Vice Chair Bondo,
Sarah Lentz.
Member Bryden,
Sarah Lentz.
Member Grant,
Sarah Lentz.
Member Noor,
Sarah Lentz.
Member Opperman,
Sarah Lentz.
incoming member Lena,
Sarah Lenz.
incoming member Ali,
Sarah Lentz.
Chair Lentz,
Sarah Lentz.
and student Rosie Ziegler, I think is not here.
Yes.
Weird. Julie Dove Kantiba,
Sarah Lentz.
Carolyn O'Brien, not here yet, and Zachary Lee is not here yet.
Okay, perfect. So the vote is unanimous with the students that are here voting with the majority. So thank you all very much. And so now we're going to open the floor for nominations for the 2024-2025 Vice Chairperson. Is there a nomination? Board Member Ali?
I would like to nominate Mickey Bondo for vice chair. Oh, I can't
Perfect,
do it
yeah.
for now. Okay.
Thank you. And for these nominations, we don't need a second. Are there any other nominations? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close nominations. But we have to take a vote to do that. Is there motion to close nominations? Thank you. Board Member Bryden, is there a second? Board Member Noor, all in favor of ceasing nominations? Okay, unanimous. Then nominations are ceased. Vice Chair Bondo, do you accept the nomination?
I'm sorry. Yes, I do accept the nomination. And thank you, Yusra. And I'm really accept it. And then just go to the leadership and moving to work. Then we are so passionate to do. So I do accept.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bondo. And Board Member Ali, would you like to speak to your nomination?
Yes, please. I nominate. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I nominate Mickey because of her passion and vision for student achievement. She encourages us to grapple with areas for improvement, looking at data, which is very important, and she's passionate about it. She stated that a lot of times, and her breadth of knowledge and contribution to the board are very valuable. And I got to see that my year. And I also really appreciate the organic relationship between Sarah and Mickey. And for that reason, I nominate Mickey.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the nomination? Vice Chair Bondo, I just wanted to speak to this nomination because I'm so grateful for your, I didn't expect to get emotional talking about this. So grateful for your leadership. And you are just an incredible partner over the last 2 years. And I don't think we could have gotten through this without each other. So I'm just so happy for the opportunity to continue to lead with you. I think you've made me a better leader because you are always asking, well, where are the outcomes? What is our impact? And you always ask the question that I don't. So I just am continually grateful to serve with you.
Likewise. Thank you, Chair.
So with that, let me just double check. Yeah. With that, we're going to move into a vote. Again, as a reminder, this is a non-binding vote to appoint Board Member Bondo to the position of Board Chair for the 2024-2025 year per policy BDB-R. Please name the individual you're voting for with your voice when you're called on. So Dr. Warren, can you please call the roll?
Member Yusra Ali,
Mickey Bondo.
Vice Chair Bondo,
Mickey Bondo.
Member Bryden,
Mickey Bondo.
Member Grant,
Mickey Bondo.
Member Noor,
Mickey Bondo.
Member Opperman,
Mickey Bondo.
incoming Member Lena,
Mickey Bondo.
incoming Member Ali,
Mickey Bondo.
Chair Lentz,
Mickey Bondo.
Student Representative Ziegler, Student Representative Kantiba,
Mickey Bondo.
Student Representative O'Brien, and Student Representative Lee.
All right, so the vote passes with the student voting with the majority. So that brings us to the end of our caucus. So thank you everyone for moving through this together. At the next meeting during the inauguration, we'll have the formal votes. So at this point, we need to have a motion to adjourn the caucus. Thank you, Board Member Bryden. Board Member Noor, you want to bring in the second for, okay, great. Keep it consistent. So all those in favor of adjourning the caucus, please raise your hand. Okay, so the caucus is adjourned. So thank you, new members. You're good to go back to your seats in the audience, and we'll see you on December 3rd for inauguration. And now we're going to move on to public comment. So if there's anyone here for public comment, you're welcome to come up to the podium or raise your hand in Zoom. Okay, I'm going to go over just a couple of guidelines that we have for public comment. So members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the schools, except for personnel matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, which shall be addressed through established policies and procedures. If an item is on the agenda, please use the public comment time associated with that item. Comments are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes or 6 minutes for individuals using an interpreter to make their comment. Individuals may not relinquish a portion of their allotted time to another speaker. The board may not respond to comments, and please refrain from responding in the audience. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disruptive conduct, including but not limited to using vulgar and/or obscene language, threatening others using words or by other actions, using pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or a group on the basis of their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, or other identity factor, making defamatory comments, exceeding the allotted time limits, taking over, interrupting others, offering repetitive comments, and offering comment on matters unrelated to the school district's programs, policies, or operations. I'll stop any public comment that is contrary to these rules. To give public comment, you come up to the podium or raise your hand in Zoom. Please begin by introducing yourself with your name and address. I'll keep the time and will raise a yellow folder indicating that you have 30 seconds remaining and a red folder signifying the end of your time. If you would like more time, you may request to do so. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Selena Beveridge, and I live in the Portland area. So my question is who do I speak to when I have followed protocol and policy in addressing a particular situation, and when everything is met with a failure, I just don't know who else to turn to or who is held responsible as far as policies. One of my biggest concerns in public school is safety and the welfare of the students that I have in this school. I currently am responsible for 4 minor individuals. 3 of them attend the Portland Public Schools. So yeah, I guess that's my main question right there is who do I turn to, I guess, when these policy fails?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So typically during public comment, we don't talk back and forth, but I think your question is very pointed and it has a very simple answer. I am happy to talk with you. You can email me or we'll have a recess in about 20 minutes. I know you've already been here for a long amount of time and we could connect then. And I'm happy to understand your needs and then point you to the right person in the district.
Okay, and then I guess if the results aren't met as far as my expectations, who do I turn to then?
Yeah, it would be the full board. So the full board is kind of so you can email the whole board to get that information to the whole board.
Okay,
Just share now.
I'm sorry.
Or you could just share now.
Well,
Oh, it's a personal.
it's like a personal matter. I guess like the overall question would be is if there are things in place to maintain the safety of the students, if that protocol fails, where do we turn to now? And what support does the child expect to find in a school when they feel like the adults in that school have failed them?
Yeah, Ms. Beveridge, I think your question is particularly a personnel question. And so I would recommend that myself and or Ms. Lentz, Chair Lentz, can follow up on it. I can share with you or any of the staff in the audience can share with you Chair Lentz's email as well. If you don't want to wait, you can certainly forward the emails that you've shared previously.
I can wait. I don't mind waiting, but I guess in general, that is the overall general question is what is there in place when protocol fails?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that not a question that you want to address publicly?
The question is that the board would take it up. The board would try to find a resolution with working with district staff to understand the situation and to make sure that every avenue has been addressed. And, that is how we get to a resolution.
I see. Okay. All right. Yes. And I will love to wait for
Perfect.
For you to have some time.
Perfect.
Thank you.
We'll take a recess around 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Not seeing anything on Zoom, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and move into my remarks. Since our last meeting, the nation has learned the outcome of the most recent presidential and other elections across the country. These results have created a lot of feelings, and rightly so, in many members of our community. This election was incredibly important and consequential, and we are already starting to feel the impact. I'm here today to remind all of us on the board that regardless of any of the outcomes of these elections, our job remains to continue to be responsible for ensuring a challenging, relevant, and joyful education that empowers every learner to make a difference in the world. This education is dependent upon our schools being safe and secure environments for every student and their family, every educator, and every staff in our district, regardless of the identities that they hold. Our district is remarkable because of the diversity that we embody, and as board chair, I vow to continue to protect the work of this district and move it forward until every student has what they need to be successful and thrive. One of the groups that of our community that has recently come under attack in the administrative changes is our beloved immigrant and refugee community. As we knew this might be the case and will likely only intensify, we have taken the following steps to ensure the safety of these students and their families. Before the election, we shared communication with our community about the supports available and provided resources to our guidance counselors. We've worked closely with our multilingual center to provide supports for families with questions. Dr. Warren, Dr. Scallon, and I are working proactively to make sure that there are supports in place if a sudden deportation plan is put into place that could result in students being separated from detained parents. We've already met with the city's DHHS and are in the process of scheduling a meeting with the state DHHS. We are also meeting with allies in this work like the ACLU and ILAP, the Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project. Additionally, I want to remind us of a resolution that was passed in 2017 by a previous iteration of this board, but that upholds our commitment of safe schools for all. This resolution made many commitments, and I would like to review a few of them now, as they are just as applicable now as they were then. In this resolution, the board resolved to, unless specifically required by a valid court order, Portland Public Schools employees, contractors, volunteers, and representatives will not use district resources for the purpose of detecting or assisting in the apprehension of persons whose only violation of law is or may be an undocumented resident in the United States, or failing to produce documents authorizing residency in the United States. Portland Public Schools employees, contractors, volunteers, and representatives shall refrain from inquiring about a student or parent's immigration status or asking to produce documentation regarding immigration status. No immigration or customs enforcement officers or other immigration law enforcement personnel shall be granted access to the public school facilities or records for the purpose of enforcing immigration laws. Just a reminder that there are no current plans for mass deportation or other action, but we're doing everything that we can to be prepared should this become the case. I would urge you that if you have questions, to reach out to guidance or the leaders of your school to get the support that you need, or also the board in this case. I wanted to give a couple of updates on things that are happening. First, the Boundaries Committee met again, and for those that maybe haven't watched the recordings, these meetings are some of the most robust meetings that I think I've been a part of in the district in terms of the amount of content that is covered and the depth in which we go into data and the weeds about the very nitty-gritty of the district. And the participation by the committee is phenomenal, and the amount of expertise in the room is really mind-blowing. And I feel incredibly lucky to have everybody in the room together. And so some of the things that we've been thinking and talking about are what does it mean, or, you know, as we move closer to creating boundaries or modifying boundaries, what are the things that we're going to hold as our North Star in those decisions? So things like continuing to uphold a neighborhood school, or being able to walk to school, or, you know, a minimal impact on families overall, and definitely minimal impact on families with siblings. So things like that are the things that we're talking about. And in the last meeting, we started to really look at the data around the boundaries that exist. And within that process, we've realized that over time, the data that we use, which is stored in multiple places and used by multiple systems, it's not synced. And so the transportation department has a different set of data than the database has. And it became very clear that to really get to the right place, and by right, I mean accurate and thoughtful and intentional and dependable, that we needed to take time to write all of those data sets. What that means is that the process is slowing down a little bit so that we can make sure that we have a dependable set of data to then modify and manipulate to get I'm using the right words, it's not absolute, but to get to the best solutions. I don't know how yet that will really impact our timeline, but I do expect it to slow us down a bit. So I just wanted to give everybody that update. I was also at the city council meeting last night and just wanted to give folks an update on the ethics ordinance that we've been working with the city on for probably now the last 6 months or so. We did provide a draft of that ordinance and along with the city council, their legal counsel, to the city council for a vote last night. The city council, there were a couple of members who wanted to make a last minute change, but it felt like we didn't have enough information or time in the room to get to an agreement on what that language or change should look like. So there was a movement to postpone again on this ordinance language until January, where then we will have a workshop all together, which I think is a great outcome of this, because I think either body making the changes without the opportunity for the other to really be in live conversation with them is a missed opportunity. So that workshop will take place in January, and I will keep you posted on that. And then finally, I recognize I'm talking a lot in my remarks tonight. I will be updating lists of the committee leadership at the next meeting, who will be chairing the committees and who will be on each of the committees. So with that, let's go ahead and go to student remarks. Student Representative McDonald, take it away from Portland High School.
Thank you so much, Chair. Wow, I cannot believe how late in the school year it already is. The first quarter flew by and Thanksgiving break is just around the corner. I know many seniors, including myself, are relieved to have this upcoming vacation. We've all been working tirelessly on college applications and other opportunities that our future might hold, while also showing up as Bulldogs. We even ordered our caps and gowns just yesterday, reminding us of the sad yet exciting finale that June of 2025 holds for us. Other than the absolute drag of college applications, the first quarter was full of many different types of success for the students at Portland. Not only did we have academic accomplishments, like being ranked second for our math team among large schools in Maine after only 2 math meets, but we also had some huge athletic accomplishments. Captains Aaron Johnson and Charlie Jacques led the boys cross-country team to getting second in the states meet, with Captains Samantha Moore and Ava Chadbourne leading the girls to also get second. Aaron and Samantha individually got first at states as well. Our football team has also had an incredibly successful season, winning most of their games by a significant margin. The 5 different captains of the football team worked to bring the players together and build a cohesive community, which in turn led to their success. Both the girls' soccer team, captains Valeria Yu, Rosa Slack, and Annalise Collin, and the girls' field hockey team, captains Jojo Philbrook and Maya Zager, won the Class A South Sportsmanship Award. This award is given to the sports teams that demonstrate the most fairness, respect, and generosity towards the opposing teams or players, and for the sport itself, both on and off the field. It's a huge accomplishment that 2 of our sports teams received this award, and it really reflects how we represent Portland in our athletics. Our many other sports teams, like volleyball and sailing, may not have had the best seasons results-wise, but everyone who I've talked to who's on a sports team feels like they have a community that they belong to, and that's what matters. The reason I've been highlighting the unity and community aspects of the sports teams is because that's what we've been focusing on as a school this year. Bulldogs Show Up is the new slogan that PHS has been representing. If any of you step into the building, you'll see posters with these words in bold all around the school. Yes, it may seem cheesy, but it's actually really helped give the students and teachers a sense of pride and purpose in the school. The administration and the school climate coordinator have really been focusing on supporting whole groups of students instead of individuals. Because of this, we've really started to notice a newfound sense of community in the student body and among teachers, especially in light of the recent election and the horrible threats that schools received on election day. Students and teachers have shown up for each other no matter what emotions they might be feeling. We have also recently faced the struggle of having our principal, Ms. Jepson, out sick, to whom we send our best wishes of a speedy recovery. But I know that these recent actions and accomplishments of the Bulldogs are making Ms. Jepson proud, as we've been able to sustain our Bulldog beliefs even in her absence. Part of showing up means good attendance, and there have even been awards in the form of Dunkin' Donuts gift cards for students who have improved their attendance in the past month. But showing up also means being there for each other and creating a safe environment. The new position of a school climate coordinator, shout out to Ms. Gilbert for all the work that she's been doing, has created a new connection between the students and the staff, as we are now trying to find solutions together with both the staff and student voices instead of finding them alone. There's a newfound strength in this slogan, and I only expect it to grow more as the year goes on. On this same note, the Student Council is working to get representatives from different multilingual and cultural groups to try and have a more diverse perspective on what's going on in the school. We want to make sure the decisions that we are making are for everyone who is a part of our community and that we are showing up and providing support for every student experience. Now, finally, my least favorite part of this report, I have to say goodbye to the board. This is my final student report as the student representative for Portland High School. And I can't thank each and every one of you enough for the experience that I've had in this position. I've learned so many valuable things about how our school system functions and about how to stand up for myself and my peers and our experience as students. This was an incredible group of people to work with, and I felt supported by every board member during my time here. You guys helped me through understanding confusing statistics, political jargon, and much more. I've always felt like my voice as a student is valued above all, and I will sincerely miss coming here every other Tuesday night from 6 to 8, although we all know it's usually longer than that, to ask all the annoying but important questions that I know you all look forward to. As much as I hate to leave, I'm confident that one of these lovely ladies in the audience will do an incredible job continuing my work in the next year. So thanks for everything.
Thank you so much, Student Representative McDonald. It is also, we'll recognize you more fully at the next meeting, but it has been a joy to have you on this board as well. Does anyone have a question for Student Representative McDonald? I'm curious if you see any impact. You said it kind of like that you felt a shift from paying attention to individual students to bigger groups, and I'm just wondering what impact you've seen that make in the culture or the climate of your school.
Yeah, I mean, overall attendance has improved like significantly. Like last year's senior class at this time had about 75% attendance rate, whereas this senior class this year has about an 85% attendance rate, so it's like 10% improved. And we can see that across all of the classes, actually, that improvement. I think over 70 freshmen were recognized for having perfect attendance in the past few weeks. And I just think that, especially with our new schedule, it was hard to swallow at first. And there are still some issues that have to be worked out with it. But people are doing a lot better in their classes. People seem happier. People are getting more work done at school. And I just think that it's providing better student-to-student relationships and student-to-teacher relationships as well.
Thank you for sharing. Any other questions for Student Representative McDonald? Let me just check Zoom. Okay. You have one? Yeah, go ahead, Board Member Billio.
Do you feel like you had a genuine experience here where you felt like you were impacting policy?
I do. Yeah, I do feel like I was. I feel like for part of it, it was hard because I didn't understand what was going on enough to like ask the important questions and do that. Like I feel like for the first few meetings, like when I was getting into it, and especially with the budget, like I was so lost for like a lot of that time. But then I felt like whenever I had a question, like Chair Lent or the superintendent, they were more than willing to sit down with me and explain it to me so that I could understand it more. And I felt like as it went on, I had more of an impact. And I always feel like the student questions are addressed first and like our comments are really appreciated. So yeah, I'd like to think I had an impact, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you for your participation. It was really noticeable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move us into a 10-minute recess right now, and we'll come back at 8:10, and we'll move into the superintendent remarks then. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to the report of the secretary while we're waiting for the superintendent to come back. So we have the consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of November 5th, 2024. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Okay, I see no corrections, so the minutes are approved as distributed. So the rest of the meeting, we have our superintendent remarks, which are fairly short, I think, tonight. Then we're going to have a secondary schools update, and then we'll have a strategic plan update. And the superintendent is coming back this way, so it's going to be just a moment.
Good evening, everybody. I apologize for my slight delay. Sarah, Chair Lentz had promised to do a little musical interlude while I was gone. It sounds like that didn't happen, so my apologies. Actually, tonight my comments are going to be very short because I will be saving them for the progress monitoring where we will be doing the first of that. I just want to very quickly recognize and congratulate our new board members that are joining us. One of the things that I am proud of as I recognize our current board and think about our new board is that we've been really intentional over the last year and a half to think about this as a team of 10 and to think about how do we work collectively as a group and work collectively as school staff to support and work together to achieve the vision of the board. And so just excited to welcome new board members, Ali and Lena, onto the board as we move forward in this work. And congratulations to Chair Lentz and Vice Chair Bondo as they continue in what is probably one of the more stressful and worst paying full-time jobs that you can possibly find. And so just a thank you to both of them because it truly is a pleasure to work with them in what is really hard work, but I feel like is something where they're both pushing us to have a really high vision of what we can accomplish as a district. And I can say personally, they support us with everything they have every day to achieve that. And so just a big thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, for that. This evening, I am excited to welcome up Dr. Ahmed for the second of the secondary updates, where he will be presenting just an update on our secondary schools, as well as the work that the network team is doing to support the continued improvement and efforts of our secondary schools. So good evening.
Good evening. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed, an assistant superintendent of secondary schools, and I'm presenting to you our secondary schools report tonight. In this report, I will share with you some highlights from our schools. Of course, this is not the only things that are happening in our schools. They're examples. Also, I will share with you how we are engaging both at the network level as well as at the school, our strategic plan. And at the end, you will have some time to ask questions if you have any.
Not moving forward.
Okay. Engaging students in problem solving and leadership skills through active engagement in the real world. Here you see that at King Middle School, students, 6th grade students are engaging board members and city council candidates for their upcoming elections. It was in October. And also, King Middle School 6th grade students visited state capitol, where they met with lawmakers. During high school, students were in 3 days stay in the state house, state capitol, where they were engaging in activities where, such as students actively were modeling the state government, legislative, executive, and judicial branches. Students took roles as legislators, drafting bills, testifying, and voting on legislations in Maine State House. Students serve as youth governors, cabinet members, or judicial officers. The program is offering diverse pathways to explore leadership and governance. We are in the season when seniors at the 3 high schools are engaging in college application processes. Make It Happen program inspires students, broaden their horizons, and show them the real possibilities in higher education. Our Make It Happen centers in all 3 high schools are actively supporting students in college application journey with college essays, FAFSA applications, guidance through timelines and application deadlines, and other requirements for college. Last week, 50 multilingual first-generation students visited Boston College and Messina College, gaining first-hand exposure to college and campus life. These are some of the photos of the students in Boston College. Now I will talk about how we are engaging in our strategic initiatives. We are monitoring and responding to the chronic absenteeism and suspension data. This graph shows the chronic absenteeism for middle and high schools. On September 2024, 34% of our high school students were chronically absent. For the month of October, the number went down to 30% of the high school students who are chronically absent. This decrease of the number of students who are absent for the month of October is about actually went 4% down. Similarly, the middle school students who were chronically absent went down for 5%. The dotted lines indicate the percentage of students who were chronically absent in middle and high schools. And for last year, it was 26% and 43%. This table shows a comparison of the suspension data in October 2023 and October 2024. On the table, there are 3 middle schools and 3 high schools. To start with the middle schools, we have mixed results with the areas of increase or decrease in either in-school suspension and out-of-school suspensions. So there are some increase in some areas and some decrease in other areas. However, at the high school level, all the 3 high schools show reduction in both in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions. We are responding to and working with our middle school teams. I would like to share that last year, October was by far the month that most of the suspensions occurred. So network team actions to respond to the data. The middle and the high schools continue to strengthen their Tier 1 practices and develop tiered advanced system. Network team director of climate and culture developed a school-specific plans in partnership with the school-based culture coordinators. Network team director of climate and culture is dedicating 50% of his time in middle school 1 to provide some support in leadership for the leadership team. The secondary network team also developed and disseminated and shared with the schools PD materials to tailor to their needs. There are also some school-based actions The cultural coordinators in all 3 schools continue to assess and strengthen their Tier 1 systems and supports. Educators at one of our middle schools are engaging in learning together and reading and having a book club that they are to gain some skills and insights. All 3 middle schools continue to strengthen advanced tier systems and practices. All 3 middle schools and 1 high school are preparing to pilot a behavioral screener to match the student needs with the supports. Next. 1 high school is relying on training students with youth-led justice to become a community council so that they can both develop their leadership, also support their peers in conflict resolutions and repair and creating a platform for restorative practices. Another way that we are engaging or the schools are engaging is awards for academics, attendance, and habits of work to encourage positive behaviors and build intrinsic motivations. This is an example of Lincoln Middle School students having their monthly award ceremony. And the students were awarded for their attendance, academics, and habits of work. This is to encourage the students to continue the good behaviors and also to motivate others to aspire to this. And that concludes the report of the secondary schools. And now if you have any questions for me.
Thank you. What questions does the board have? Yes, Vice Chair Bondo, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for the presentation. I have 2 questions. I just want to on the college application for the senior, I think juniors, seniors. I think on that slide. I just want to make sure if we have been taking into consideration what the students mentioned last time when we met them. I think it's last month, about the lack of opportunity through the guidance office during those kind of process. I just want to make sure that if we heard the voice of the students, and if anything, if any action, I know it's been a little closer, but I just want to make sure if any step forward to make sure that we have included the voices of the students in regard of those opportunities, those lack of opportunity through the guidance office.
Yeah. Thank you. And yes, I shared our discussion and my notes with the principal of the school, and asked him to take what is the next steps to intervene there. So I shared this, and we took the students' input seriously, and we shared this.
Okay, you have shared that, but what have you been taking into consideration? I mean, if something is going to happen, they're going to change. They are building some strategy around those issues to improve.
Yes, I'm waiting. He has his one-on-one with the head of the department, and I'm waiting for the responses from him. But
okay, can I stay updated with, because when we talk about college applications, and then we heard what the student been mentioned and been, never get a lot of opportunities, even a lot of concern around those issues. So I just want to make sure that we're on the top of that, because we really need to open up space for the student to have a voice heard and also taking some actions around that to improve the system. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So the second question is about suspension. I saw some decrease on some of the number of suspension in different schools. So do you maybe you may not have it, but do we know exactly which areas, which kind of actions it can be around fight or any kind of issues really related to those decrease? We increase the number of students, those number decreased being related to all different actions. So do you have anything on the top of your head? If it was the number of the student been fighting, or is the number of the student in different areas from the in and out of school suspension?
I don't have the data or the segregated data of the reasons or the infractions that the students were suspended or with which category went down, but we can get those numbers to you.
Yes, can we do that? Because it's making sense. It's not making too much sense to me when we see the numbers of the students in or out decrease, but we don't know about those kind of infractions, because we know if we have that combination, it's going to make more sense to me to align exactly from that decrease and then to see those actions being taken into consideration in the climate of the school so we can see those improvements as well.
It's a good question.
All right,
Thanks. I'll get it to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
Vice Chair Bando, I actually also wonder if we could just get that added to the monthly data report for the board that we're starting to get. We can talk about that offline, but.
Yeah, we can look at how that data exists right now in the system and whether that data is in a format where we can easily report it. And if it is, certainly.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, Board Member Ali.
I just wanted to ask for opportunities like visiting the State House and college visits. Is that like just one school, or is it possible or does it exist for all three high schools? And for especially the State House visit, I was wondering, is there a reason why kids who are interested between the three high schools were not picked to attend and it was just one school?
I think it was a club or student clubs, and our schools have different activities and clubs, and so this was done under, and you can speak to this. You were there, right?
I was.
Oh, you didn't go? Yeah. So it was a club that one of the club extension of the debate club that go from Deering High School who went there. So, but there are many opportunities and tens of clubs in each high school.
I'm just wondering if all the clubs have the resources to kind of think about these kind of opportunities and plan for it and go on these important trips.
Can I just add one piece? So one of the things that we want to do in this, right, is highlight some of the great opportunities that exist in our schools, because sometimes when we sit here and we look at the data and we really sort of like publicly wrestle with what's going on here and how do we do this, we sometimes forget all of the great things. And so I'm just going to name this because Dr. Ahmed is probably too humbled to say this out loud, is he had a slide deck of about 10 slides here that had highlights from each school. Knowing that if every board meeting we do that, where we highlight 2 to 3 things at each of the schools, we're going to be here too long, is we chose to highlight only 1 or 2 things at each board meeting. And so it doesn't mean that there's an absence of it at the other schools. It means that we're trying to show off or highlight a couple of things just to give the board sort of that indicator of here are some things that are happening in schools. It's a fair question about whether or not there's equal opportunity. And it's certainly the case when you get to something like clubs and that sort of thing, that you'll have differences in advisors and opportunities there. But we do a lot of work between both how we fund at the central office, as well as funding that's provided by the foundation, to make sure that there's opportunities so that if there's interested students and interested adults, there's funding available. And so that's what I would say about this. And so I don't want to have folks look at this and be like, King students got the opportunity to meet with local, state, and national elected officials and nobody else did. But it's very in fact, I know it's a fact that there were other slides about what Lincoln students did or what Moore students did, and it simply met the cutting room floor because of time.
Okay, that makes me feel good. Thank you so much for that.
Did you want to add something? Yeah, I don't mind. Dr. Ahmed, it's good for that. Yeah.
I feel compelled to jump in and say that the foundation this year did offer co-curricular grants for clubs specifically that does include travel. And we put out to all staff in an email in September that if there are opportunities that arise, like if a club makes it to nationals for a debate team or Odyssey of the Mind, that the foundation does have funding this year on a rolling basis to help clubs have those opportunities. So I just wanted to make sure that this group is aware of that. Thanks.
Awesome. I saw Board Member Bryden, and then we'll come back to Board Member Figdor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this information. I have a quick question about the slide where it was the Lincoln Middle School award ceremony. I think I saw that the top of the slide said intrinsic motivation, and so I'm in my own head trying to think through how that fits in with, the adults in the building saying, I'm giving you an award that's extrinsic. And also when Vice Chair Bondo was asking about the voice of the students, that also, I feel like there's an overlap. I'm really curious whether the Lincoln Middle School students, any school, but particularly with that slide, whether they've been asked, what do you want for a reward for the howls and the, attendance? What is it that you really want that we can use, as a motivator? Is that a conversation that's happening or?
Not I'm aware of, but I had actually one of the slides which were what we took out was the video in which the students and how they were really ready for this and excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it didn't make it for the purpose of time. Initially I started with literally as Dr. Scallon said, a video and 2-3 slides from every school, and we ended up with this. And that's why in my beginning I said this is an example. It's not everything going on in schools, but as Charlotte mentioned about Dunkin' Donut cards in one school, in another school is certificate, another school is let's drum for this. So
there's some tailoring.
Tailoring, and what is available and what.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and I've heard from lots of educators and students about the tailoring that is happening around rewards at every level. Yeah. Board Member Figdor?
That's okay.
Okay. Student Representative Hayden, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for the report. I'm just curious, in the high schools in particular, where you're talking about in and out of school suspension, mainly for attendance purposes, and I apologize if this echoes Vice Chair Bondo's sentiment too closely, but I'm curious if when students are undergoing an in or out of school suspension, how that appears in their attendance, and are we considering whether or not that's an excused absence for a sort of a reprimanding period is sort of contradictory to the behavior you're trying to, I'm not really phrasing this right, but I'm wondering, are students being excused for their absences when they are in this infractionary period? And if we're considering that as motivation for them to continue the behavior that results in the suspension.
So I will just try my understanding of this. Is basically saying, is the suspension being effective enough to prevent this to not happen again, rather than it can lure more students, saying it's time off and I'll go home and then I'll catch up with my work. Does that make?
Yeah, that's about it. I'm sorry I phrased it confusingly.
Yeah.
And one more thing in connection with that, just how are we accounting for the lost class time that students are facing?
Yeah, so it's just there is a code that students, different codes for the students who are out of the class. So excused, unexcused, late to the class, in school suspension, out of school suspension. So there is different codes and that's the way how we collect our data. So that is how we code it. And if individual, educator or leader finds that this intervention is coming from, as a principal, this is a time that the kid will tell me, like, suspend me, I want to go home. Then I know that that's not working for that student. So we'll try to go to the root cause of this and how we can help and work with this student. But also we are governed by the policies and also the safety of everyone. So there are some times that the students are sent home and some maybe like what they wanted, but that's what we discourage, like to have them in the school, and they will catch up with the work. So most of the students or the students are given the opportunity when they're suspended to come to make up the work that they missed for the classes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Board Member Noor, go ahead.
I have a clarifying question regarding the behavioral screener that's in the 3 middle schools and high school. Does that just mean that there's someone collecting data on behaviors? Is that what we're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
I have a question.
Yeah, Board Member Bilio, go ahead.
Can you expand more on why, why the high schools are relying on students to develop like peer support?
That's actually not only relying on it, but it is mainly like is training students with youth-led justice and creating, relying maybe the wrong, choice.
Yeah.
But it is one of empowering students and creating student leadership, and so creating this platform where students actually are supporting each other in conflict resolution. So the students are getting trained by the youth-led justice, and they are also practicing how to very much like peer mediation and creating supports for their peers for resolution for some of the conflicts.
And then youth-led justice, the organization, or just like the concepts?
Yeah, the organization.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what is expected from them after they complete this process? Like, will they then have to be a peer resource leader or?
Yes, and they are supporting their peers and working with the schools. And we had this program for a long time when worked with the youth-led justice.
Mm-hmm.
And before it was students going to get trained and coming back and supporting the schools, and having their some schools actually have a bigger presence of youth-led justice. But this is actually one of our schools now is starting that program with the students.
Okay. I think it would be helpful to know how impactful that work has been, like with the data. Sorry to go back to the data, but when you guys do have a chance, I think it would be helpful to at least if, the year before or maybe, 2-3 years, not like 10 years down the line, but just like a reference to how it's going, if it's actually like repairing harm or if it's just more work that students are having to do. I don't know if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But thank you. That's my question.
Thanks.
Thank you, Board Member Bilio. Any other questions from the board? Let me just double check that Julianne and Vice Chair Bondo don't have any. Okay, so I think that, thank you very much. I did want to just say, I just appreciate all the attention on attendance. I know that we're starting to see maybe some positive results there, but I think from what Student Representative McDonald said and just other conversations that I've been hearing across the district, it does feel like the intentional focus on that is getting us some movement. So I just thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and then we're going to move to the strategic plan update.
Yeah, just before we do it, I think it's a sort of a natural transition to speak for a minute on the secondary update and then to transition overall to the progress monitoring. I just want to highlight a couple of pieces that are in the secondary update that it's really too early to say about the overall impact and to say that there's a long-term trend, but I just want to highlight a couple of pieces in terms of how we're thinking about the work overall. So first is we want to make sure that the work we're doing is grounded in the data and making sure that when we're looking at data and when we're thinking about the actions we're taking is it having impact on the actual data that we see. The second is that we're grounding it in what we identified as the important data that we wanted to use to monitor progress. And the third is that we made a significant shift this past year from a central academic team that did a lot of great work. The core of that work was around program development to really thinking about network teams that were about working in partnership with schools around implementation and support and responsiveness to the work. And so just a couple of things just to sort of like name there is, as you were just pointing out, Chair Lentz, is when we think about secondary data from September to October, right, when the network team and the school teams were intentionally focusing around making sure that we were supporting and responding to attendance and supporting students to be in school, they were able to see a drop in overall chronic absenteeism. If you look at chronic absenteeism as a country and as schools, you typically see that chronic absenteeism actually grows throughout the school year. It doesn't actually go down. And so this is a trend that it's way too early in the school year to see, but what the network team was trying to highlight there were some of the actions where they tried to get really intentional about what were the actions that this network team was doing and what were the school teams doing that directly aligned to this. And when it came to suspensions, last year when the network team and the schools looked at data, what they noticed was that the highest month of suspensions across the whole year was October. And so as a collective of both network teams and school teams, they said, not this year. October is not going to be the highest month this year for suspensions. And they got proactive about it, from messaging to staff, messaging around their own actions and thinking about it. And when we look at that, whether through the data packets you saw, or in their own, we had one school that had 0 suspensions, another school that had a total of 2. The previous year had 11 at the high school level, and one that went from 16 to 4. They tried to get really concrete about that. And so I know that we can naturally drill in with all of the questions, right? And we should continue to ponder and wonder and like push on this. But I do also want to like recognize that in terms of that idea of really like getting proactive and using the data and saying, what do we need to do? I do want to recognize that they really tried to think about what are the actions that we need to do across the network for all schools and name those as network actions, and what do we need to do individually as schools? And then when they looked at it and they said, look, we have one school that when we look at this data is really the outlier, and we need to make sure they support even more intentionally. They shifted capacity so that they didn't respond where all 6 schools got the same. But when you look at that second action on the first slide in terms of network actions, Dr. Ahmed and the team are shifting 50% of that climate person to really supporting that one school. I just want to like acknowledge that we're not where we want to be yet, but in terms of being responsive to the data and really saying, let's make sure that all of our schools are on track and we're being responsive, just a credit there. Our data systems are not yet where, if you asked, how does this break down in terms of socioeconomic or other subgroups, that we have that at the tip of the fingers of our folks that are on the front line doing this work, or even some of the data that we want them to have in terms of what are the precursor pieces or the antecedent actions they don't necessarily have that yet. And so that's less a reflection of them being responsive to the data and more that our own data systems don't yet give them that tool in an easy way. And so that's a piece where it's less a lack of their piece, but just more an acknowledgement that that's why that is such an important initiative for our district this year. And why when we look at progress monitoring here in a second, we're going to sort of talk about the fact that 5.1 around data systems is so important. And so just want to acknowledge that what we're trying to show you in these elementary and secondary updates is a couple of pieces so that you have the connection of what's going on in the school so that you know some of the programming pieces, but then secondarily, what we're asking the assistant soups to do is take you from like the abstract, where I'm going to tell you at a really high level, what are we doing in terms of progress monitoring, to make it really concrete and to say, here's what we're seeing in the data and here's what we're doing as a result. Because we're about to go from sort of like 500 feet level back up to about a 2,000 foot level with the progress monitoring. And so I just want to like acknowledge that and just like give credit to the school teams because it does feel like to what actually student representative McDonald actually shared earlier on in terms of even the school being responsive in terms of schedule and the impact it's having around attendance. I mean, I almost like ran over and gave you a hug because I think about you in September and what you shared about the schedule and the frustration and where it is now is like two different places. And so one, just appreciate you like, you know, giving them the sort of like patience to work through it and to see the impact, but also acknowledging that the schools really are trying to be responsive to the data and see that it has impact. And sometimes that's not the like the cool, exciting work, but that's the work that has to happen. All right, there we go. So tonight at just about 9 o'clock on the dot is our first opportunity at the board level to pause, reflect on our progress year to date on our strategic plan. To do that, we're going to look at the process that we go through both at the school, district, and then board level. We're going to remind ourselves of the strategic plan priorities and mission measures. We'll give you an update on where we're at with each of the initiatives, and then as the board has requested, share with you some budget implications specific to these initiatives. And so if you were listening in on the Finance Committee meeting yesterday, you will not see that there's a one-to-one correspondence with these budget implications, as these are specifically focused on these initiatives. The summary provided this evening comes after ongoing progress monitoring at the school and central offices over the last month. Just to give you a sense of the level of depth that we do at this, on a monthly basis, we go through a pretty intense and thorough process to monitor each initiative on a monthly basis. Initiative team leads meet with Attuned, our strategic planning partner, to go over their initiative. They submit a progress report, and then they meet with me to go over exactly where they're at on their initiative. That includes a reflection on progress within that month, as well as any adjustments that are needed to make sure that the initiative is up to date and on track. 4 times a year, and we've just finished the first one of them actually on Halloween. We meet together as a full executive committee cabinet, as well as other initiative leads that may not be on cabinet, to review formal progress across all of our initiatives so that we know where we stand across all of the strategic plan. At that time, we also look at where we may need to adjust resources and support, and we take that information and then we share it with you so that you're aware and can hold us accountable for making progress throughout. A similar but slightly different process happens at the school level as well. And that includes walkthroughs of classrooms, sitting down with principals, and then principals sharing out with schools, a reflection on where they're at relative to the district initiatives. And they actually come up with small action plans relative to the initiatives that they implement at the school level as well. And so this happens at the school, the district, and then here with you tonight. As a reminder, our strategic plan is grounded in 5 priorities, which closely mirror the priorities from the Portland Promise. You've seen these before, but they are equity, achievement, whole student, people, and systems. And within these, we have initiatives. And this is all designed to make sure that we are hitting what we believe are ambitious yet feasible measures that are 5-year targets that align to the goals that we have set within our strategic plan. We're not going to go in depth on these because they're not designed to be measured at every progress monitoring. They're actually really designed to hold us accountable at the 5-year, but we will look at them at the end of each year to make sure that we're making progress along them. And so you can see the first set of the measures here, and then the second set. And then tonight, I'm excited to share with you that we're making steady progress on our initiatives and have made adjustments to the action plans, but not the overall initiatives of any initiative where we've identified them as at risk. And so what you can see here is grouped below initiatives as identified as launch initiatives, pilot initiatives, or design initiatives. These are the 10 initiatives that the board agreed to in the strategic plan for this year. Then you have the initiative lead, and then you have what is our sort of version of a stoplight on the far right. Green means that it's on progress to meet the end of year goal. Yellow means that it's at risk and we've made some adjustments or are monitoring it. And so it doesn't mean that it's made no progress, but it's not quite where we want it to be. And then if it was red, it would mean that it has not made any progress. We do not have any initiatives that we've identified as making no progress. Overall, if you were to do a little counting here, there are 10 initiatives. 5 of them are on track. 5 of them we measure as at risk. One of the things that we talked about when we did our step back for our strategic plan is we talked about the fact that one of the things that's actually most important for us to do and to be comfortable with is to feel that we can say that something's at risk and know that that doesn't mean that it's a failure, but it actually means that we're recognizing that we need to make adjustments. And it's a heck of a lot better to do that and to say that on November 19th than it is to say that on June 19th. And so that is something that I'm proud of everybody here who said that and where we made adjustments. On the next slides, I'm going to go through an update on each of the initiative and some of the progress that's been made, as well as where we've identified some of the barriers, and just walk you through that. So of the 4 initiatives in the launch or pilot phase, 2 we identify as on track and 2 we identify as at risk. Bless you. Of the K-5 ELA implementation, we identify this as on track. A reminder that the K-5 is continuing the launch of EL. So last year, the schools, almost all of the schools, but not quite all of them, started the launch of the EL English curriculum. There was, I believe, 1 school that did not launch it at all, but has started this year, and a couple where it had been launched in some grades, but not all. At this point, the EL curriculum has now been launched in all schools with a plan for a minimum of 2 of 3 modules. And CKLA, which is the phonics-based curriculum, has been launched in all of the schools. You can see in here that not just have the curriculum has been launched, but we also have supporting and monitoring that's going alongside it. So classroom walkthroughs occurred in all of our schools. We've also done research-based reading intervention on Orton Gillingham for approximately 50 staff. That gets at making sure that we have additional reading support for students who need that, and that we have anecdotally leaders reporting that they're more consistently in classrooms. And so when we looked at this initiative, the identification was that it was overall on track. At the 6 through 8 level, we don't have CKLA. We just have the launch of EL. And in this case, we differentiated and identified it as at risk because there's a little more uneven implementation of EL at this time. The reflection that we've seen is that the longer that teachers use the EL curriculum, the more they like it. And we've started to leverage that so that some of our late adopters, we're working to help them. But we do have some teachers that have not adopted at the level that we would expect. And so that has been a challenge that we are working through, both in terms of just supporting and identifying what the barriers are, but helping get through that. One of the good pieces around that, not a good piece, but one of the pieces to help with that is the coaches that we have in our middle schools appear just super motivated, the right people for the job, and so are working through it in partnership with our secondary director of academics, but there's still work to be done here. And so I would say that this is just taking longer to ramp up than it did in the K-5 space. And so that is where we're at on that. The special education instruction. So here we wanted to be able to say that we were designing and piloting strategies to improve instruction for students with disabilities using universal design for learning. We made progress, and we're getting really significant feedback and positive feedback with the shift of capacity to schools and having school-based coordinators. At the same time, we have not seen the progress we have wanted this year so far, and we did recently enter into a contract for additional consulting capacity to get this back on track. We entered into a contract with a group called District Management Group. They're a consulting group out of Boston that specializes in special education. And so they're building off of work that's happened in the past with the district, but doing a deep analysis of our continuum of services in the district and helping us think through not just the continuum, but also how do we make sure that we're fully staffed and able to support our special education programming. And then 5.1, I did just share a bunch about this, but we are making significant progress, both in just interim data and the use of data, but we are on track to have our new data system in place at the end of this year and to be able to be fully utilizing it next year. So that's just very exciting. Of the 6 initiatives in the design phase, 3 are on track and 3 are at risk. And I'm just going to take a slight, honest Ryan reflection. If you spent a little bit of time with me, you know that I have a hard time sitting in just the design phase. Chair Lentz, you don't need to nod quite that vigorously. But I'm a person who wants action and to dig into the work immediately. And so it's hard for me to sit in the idea of really just design. And so what we often see in the initiatives, the 6 initiatives here, is that there's this tension of how do we give time to just the design work and the desire to see change tomorrow for the sake of students. And so that's a tension that we live with in this. And I think that was part of our reflection within this. And so 1.1 in the staff equity mindset, we've made progress in the design work here. We have tension with also trying to do some of the equity work this year. And what really put us in the idea of identifying this as at risk is when we said, are we in a spot right now with where it currently sits to be on track to have a fully flushed out, deeper development plan next year? We felt like we were at risk. We have a couple of balls in the air in terms of a potential deeper partnership with the Leadership Academy and a funder that's interested in potentially supporting that would put this back on track. But if that did not go through, we're going to need to get creative and to think about shifting some capacity. And so that's why we identified that as at risk right now. 2.4 is the high school design work. And so this is where, again, we have that tension of the this year and the long term. So when it comes to the piece around doing the submission for the high school redesign and the integrated consolidated, we're on track and should be able to submit that application. We also got a significant grant from BAR, and we got that in September, at the end of September. And so when we think about the work that comes with that, that's where we want to make sure that we're also implementing that work. It aligns nicely with the strategic plan, but it's pushing us to accelerate a little bit our ninth grade academy work and a little bit our teaming structure. And so that's the piece where we identified this as at risk. I also just want to pause here for just a second because I had a long meeting with our staff at Portland Portland High School last week, and I did promise them that I would share with the board that as we continue down the path of high school design, we will continue to engage all of our communities in this conversation. And this is, I don't think will be a surprise to anybody around this table, but there's still a lot of work to do to, one, flush out the design and to make sure that we are in a spot where we're really clear about what does this future vision look like. And how do we get to a spot where we are creating a model that really leverages all of the great things that are currently happening in our school, as well as the opportunities that would come from a new facility. And so how do we think about what a 2,000 kid campus looks like that also maintains really great relationships and the small communities that we want kids to also experience. And when I met with the Portland staff, what was clear from that conversation is we still had a ways to go in that. And so I just want to acknowledge that as we engage and continue in this work, that we have ways to go as a district and as staff and as superintendent to continue in that engagement. 3.1 is split here in terms of elementary and secondary, and we identified them both as on track. We talked a little bit about this already in terms of work that's happening, but this is again where we are working on both this year as well as the long term, but we're seeing some good progress with the introduction of our culture coordinators, work around reestablishing or establishing PBIS and attendance teams, and that schools are really thinking about advisory and what does that look like, particularly across the high schools. This is a spot where it's in design work, especially at the high school level in some cases, and not fully implemented yet, nor would it be expected to be. 4.1 is one where we're thinking about strong and inclusive staff culture. And so this is one where if you asked an outside organization, do you have a really strong staff culture, and what are the components of it? They could tell you about their values, their norms, and those types of pieces, and what does it mean to work at that. That's one that we have work to do as a district, and so this is work that our Executive Director of Equity and Belonging is leading, and Barrett Wilkinson has already pulled together a cross-district work group. They've reviewed the research and data across organizations around what does it take to really establish a strong and inclusive staff culture, and is working with that work group to define that for Portland Public Schools. And so we're on track right now to have a draft vision of that we can then start to socialize and norm and get feedback on across the district. 5.2, decision rights and communication. This is getting at two different things. We did a lot of restructuring of the district. And so one is just about being really clear about decision rights. And then the second is about having stronger practices in terms of how we communicate and how we are clear about those. And this is one where we go back and forth about exactly whether this is on track or at risk. And I think we're still in the space where we're trying to work out these key pieces. And we're not in a spot where I would say it is smooth. And so we identify it as at risk. And then the last piece is sustainable multi-year financial. This is, again, just the work of cleaning up our financial practices. We continue to make progress on this. It is slow, but we continue to make progress on it. And so we feel good about that. And so those are the updates on the 10 initiatives. And at this time, we do anticipate budget implications for these initiatives. And so special education, as we shared last night with the Finance Committee, is that we do anticipate that the work coming out of DMG and this initiative, that we'll be both asking for increased staffing to support pipeline work, but also just within special education and our central office capacity, as well as non-personnel costs as we think about program development and supports. Staff culture, we're doing it on a shoestring budget right now, but as we think about building staff culture, we will be asking for a small budget to cover those expenses in FY26. And that if you looked at the laundry list of initiatives that are coming up, you should just have in the back of your mind, if we have 10 this year, it doubles basically next year. And so there are a couple of pieces for that. And so with that, I will stop and take questions about where we're at on the initiatives.
What questions do board members have? I'm really excited that we have a stoplight system on all of these initiatives. I find that very easy to take a glance and know where we are. The only one that I had a question about, or maybe needed a little bit more detail on as you were giving those updates, was around the high school design process. Could you speak again with a little more detail about why we're at risk on that one?
Yeah, so I want to differentiate between two different pieces there. So let me differentiate between three, because I probably confused it by doing a slight intermission there. So one is I want to acknowledge that we have work to do to continue to be clear about our vision and engage our community on that work. And to acknowledge that there's a really long runway on this work before we get to a final, what the high school would look like. Even the application that goes to the state is not the final of what it'll look like. And so that's one piece, and that was the piece around Portland High School and what they shared. And so I wanted to acknowledge that, and I told them that I would share that feedback with the board. The reason for the stoplight, though, is there's two different components to the high school design. The first is around the submission to the state for the application for high school design. That's really a big part of this charge. And on that, we're on track. We will submit, and we're on track to submit to the state the integrated consolidated application in June, and we already submitted in August the major construction application. So if it was only that piece, it would be green. The second component of this is the work that is to continue to strengthen and prepare students for college and career. And we received funding from the Barr Foundation to support that work. It is directly aligned to the strategic plan. It's not new work, but it pushes us to do that work a little bit faster and probably a little bit bigger than what we would have otherwise done in year one in terms of 9th grade. And it came a little bit late in terms of timing. It came to us at the end of September that we received that. And so when we think about the Barr grant pieces, we are at risk.
Got it. Thank you. That's helpful. Other questions from the board? Board Member Bryden, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Superintendent. Really useful and thorough information. I really appreciate it. My question has to do with capacity. Just very, as a generalization, it looks like about half of these things are on track and a little bit less than half are at risk. So my question is, I'm hoping you could speak a little bit to whether or how realistic it is to think that we're going to add in another 9-10 initiatives in year two and be able to keep a lot of things on track. And there's different levers, and different, variables involved, but I would really appreciate your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so, I mean, a couple thoughts on it. So one is being at risk does not mean that movement didn't happen. And so even if you looked at like 6 to 8 ELA implementation where we identified as at risk, I think there's been significant movement and progress along there. And so I don't want it to be thought of as binary of like either on or off, because I don't think that would be sort of accurate. I think in many cases we've made adjustments that will help move it forward. And so a great example of that is DMG supporting special education, how we're thinking about decision rights and communication for 5.2. And doing that, and how we're even thinking about staff equity mindsets. So I do think there's a piece that's really helpful to look at this. And even when we did the step back, we thought about like, how do we need to adjust? That said, when we look forward a year, and this is always the intention within our strategic plan, is not to just push things off, but to have that honest conversation. And when I look at the strategic plan for next year, I do think we will need to have a conversation with staff and then with the board about pressure testing this and getting feedback at both levels to say, do we need to adjust this? And that you may push us to say, this isn't enough or fast enough, and so we really want you to focus on this some more. Or we feel like you can push this one off a year. Because, for example, next year, all of the people initiatives actually go into either a pilot or a design phase. That's probably going to overstress our HR team. And so we probably need to push one of them back. And factors that come out of just like the experience will maybe make us. So this year, executive director, Sarah Warren has been sort of like helping to lead our social work team. And we'll hire a new social work lead for that. But that initiative around looking at student mental health is an initiative that comes up next year. We may say that we want to bring on somebody, give them some time to get grounded before they take on that lead. And so I think that's where we're going to need to look at all of that within context, and then perhaps adjust some.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Yeah, Board Member Grant, go ahead.
Mickey had her hand.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Vice Chair Bondo first, and then Board Member Grant.
Thank you, Niall. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think the first part of my question was already answered, as was the chair questions as well. But I have a second, I think it may be a recommendation, Superintendent. When on the 2.4, the high school redesign, I wonder how much the student voice has been included into that process.
How much student voice has been included in the high school design process?
Yes.
Yeah, so I know that there's been focus groups at all levels. I can't speak at this time definitively to exactly how much high school voice has been captured. I know it's been included in all of it. I don't know if you want to add anything, Member Figdor.
I'll just add, Board Member Bondo, that there are student representatives from each of the high schools that participate and have actively participated on high school design on the core team. And they work, they've worked very closely, been at all the meetings with the principals and the other staff that are at the table doing this work.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Board Member Grant. Oh, Board Member Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was about the retaining of the consulting group in special ed. I just was curious, is this mostly about plugging holes in headcount, or is there more to it than that? I thought maybe you could just give a little bit more explanation of what they're doing and why.
Yeah, so originally we thought we'd be able to do most of this work in-house. And we lost some capacity at the beginning of this year in terms of staffing. And so our central office team has been stretched thin to provide support that they otherwise would have had to do this work. And so that's where we wanted to be, make sure that this initiative moved forward because of the importance it has and the impact that special education has throughout the district. And so at its most basic level, I think of this as having sort of three areas that it captures. One is doing an assessment of our current state. That's programming as well as staffing. The second is providing us within that then a realistic and appropriate recommendation of what models should look like, what the continuum should look like, what staffing could look like. And then the third is helping us get from what is our current state to that in a reasonable and appropriate way so that we're not sort of setting ourselves up where it is an impossibility, but that we have it. DMG is a group that has done this nationally in many, many contexts. And so I think they're able to say, based on a district of this size, within this type of structure, here's what you're going to have to do in-house, here's what's available to outsource as well, and here's how you could effectively staff it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, seeing no questions, just thank you for that update, Superintendent. And I'm going to move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Yes. Sorry, a second.
I'll give it to you, Board Member Bilio. All those in favor, please raise your hand. We are adjourned at 9:27 p.m. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.